This is Dr. K. Jagannayaki, Professor in MBA Department, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Today's topic is loss of returns and economies of scale. After going through this topic, the learner will be able to understand the meaning of loss of returns, economies of scale, types of economies of scale, and diseconomies of scale, along with advantages and disadvantages. Coming to law of returns to scale. So, returns to scale is a term that refers to the proportionality of changes in output after the amounts of all input in production have been changed by the same factor. Technology exhibits increasing, decreasing, or constant returns to scale. So, coming to the types of returns to scale, it is divided into two types: short run and long run. So, in case of short run, the inputs kept constant, one input labor is varied. Whereas in case of long run, all inputs varies. So based on the short run production process, it is known as law of variable proportion, and in the long run, it is law of returns to scale. For example, if a soap manufacturer doubles its total input but gets only a 40% increase in total output, it can be said to have experienced decreasing returns to scale. If the same manufacturer ends up doubling its total output and it has achieved constant returns to scale. So, coming to the production function and its component, the law of variable proportions is as follows. If a producer increases the units of one variable factor while keeping all other variables fixed, then initially the total product increases at an increasing rate, then it increases at a diminishing rate, and finally starts declining. The law of returns to scale explains the proportional change in output with respect to the proportional change in input. In other words, the law of returns to scale states when there are a proportionate change in the amounts of inputs, the behavior of output will also change. So if you see this diagram, the production function is divided into two types: short run and long run production function. So coming to short run, we used to have returns to a factor, and whereas here we are talking about returns to scale. And under this particular short run production function, we will consider one factor as variable and our other variables kept constant. And whatever analysis we used to do under this, that is short run analysis, and which is known as law of variable proportions. And coming to the long run, returns to scale, all factors are variable, and what kind of analysis should be done under this production function means that is long run production analysis, and the law whatever applicable to this is law of returns to scale. The law of variable proportions. What are the assumptions of this law of variable proportions? Let us see. Constant state of technology. This is the first assumption. Constant state of technology. So it is assumed that the state of technology will be constant, and with improvements in the technology, the production will improve. And second assumption is variable factor proportions. So this assumes that factors of production are variable. The law is not valid if factors of production are fixed. Third assumption, homogeneous factor units. It assumes that all the units produced are identical in quantity, quality, and price. It means the units are homogeneous in nature. The next assumption, short run. It assumes that this law is applicable for those systems that are operating for a short term where it is not possible to alter all factor inputs. If you see the table here, we have taken land and capital, the units of fixed factor, and only one variable, that is workers changes. Then based on that, we are going to find out total product in tons of wheat, marginal product, average product, stages of variable proportions. So as we told that land and capital fixed, so 10 units of land and capital, and where we can see there is variation in terms of workers. When land and capital 10 units and workers 0, the total product becomes 0. When worker increased by 1, your total product 6, marginal product 6, average product also 6. If you increase wages by 2, workers by 2, your total production becomes 14. Your marginal product, the difference between 14 and 6, that is 8. And if you increase further, then we can find changes in terms of marginal product, total product, and average product. So if you observe this particular pattern up to here, we can find that there is an increased returns at increasing rate. But whereas if you observe the rest 7.6 to 7, here also increasing but at diminishing rate, and finally we see negative returns. So this is known as law of variable proportion. So the stages of law of variable proportion are three phases. The first one is increasing returns. In many cases, the increase in variable factor is initially followed by increasing marginal returns, that is, total output increases more than proportionally to the variable factor. And this phase does not last longer. Soon, the law of diminishing starts. Then second phase is decreasing returns. If increase in variable factor is continued, the marginal products start falling. That is, the law of decreasing sets in, and this law is more universal and lasts longer. No business can escape this law. Whatever may be the type of business, we can find this law. Sooner or later, every economic activity comes under this law. Then, third phase is negative returns. When a business experiences decreasing returns and the quantity of variable factor is further increased, the marginal returns becomes negative. The same thing we have projected in this table, graphical representation of the three stages of law of variable that we can see here. The stages of production, stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3. If you observe this graph, the total product initially increasing at an increasing rate, later increases at a decreasing rate. If you observe average product increases and reaches maximum, and whereas marginal product, if you observe at stage 1, increases and reaches a maximum, then starts falling. Whereas coming to the second stage, total product increasing at a decreasing rate and becomes maximum, and average product, if you observe, decreasing, and marginal product continues to fall and becomes 0. Whereas in stage 3, total product decreases, then second average product continues to decrease, and marginal product, if you observe, it became negative. Production in the long run, loss of returns to scale. In the long run, the fixed inputs like machinery, building, and other factors will change along with the variable factors like labor, raw material, etc. With the equal percentage of increase in input factors, we can see various combinations of return occur in an organization. So, coming to returns to scale, the change in percentage output resulting from a change in all the factors of production. They are increasing, constant, and diminishing returns to scale. So, if you observe the long run production function, it is categorized into three types: increasing to returns to scale, constant returns to scale, diminishing returns to scale. So, in case of increasing returns to scale, total output may increase more than proportionately, and coming to constant returns to scale, total output may increase proportionately, and coming to decreasing returns to scale, total output may increase less than proportionately. If you see this table, the scale whatever we are going to take, the combination of variables, one machine plus one labor, the total product is 4 units, marginal product is 4. This is first phase. In case of combination, 2 machines plus 2 labor, your total product may increase by 10. The marginal product is 6. 3 machines, 3 labor, 18. 8. If you observe the first phase, we are seeing that there is an increase in returns. Coming to 5 machines plus 5 labor, your total product may increase to 38. The marginal difference between 4 machines and 5 machine combination 10, and when you are adding one more additional unit 6 machine plus 6 labor, the total product went to 48. Again, the marginal product remains the same. So this type of returns are known as constant return. By adding one more additional unit to the same combination 7 machine plus 7 labor, your total product 56 and marginal product decreases. And 8 machine plus 8 labor, total product increases but your marginal product decreases. So this kind of returns are known as decreasing returns. The stages of returns to scale. Stage 1, the total production increased at an increasing rate. So we refer to this as increasing stage, where the total output, marginal product and average production are increasing. Coming to second stage, the total production continues to increase but at a diminishing rate until it reaches the next stage. So marginal product and average product are declining but they are positive. The total production is at the maximum level at the end of the second stage with a zero marginal product. Coming to stage 3, in this third stage, total production declines and marginal product becomes negative, and the average production also started decline, which implies that the change in input factors, there is a decline in overall production along with average and marginal products. So if you consider the stage 1 increasing returns to scale, when a certain proportion need change in both inputs, capital and labor leads to a more than proportionate change in output, it exhibits increasing returns to scale. For example, if quantities of both inputs, labor and capital are successively doubled and the corresponding output is more than doubled, the returns to scale is said to be increasing. If you see this particular table, 1 labor plus 1 capital, the output is 10 total product and the proportionate change is nothing, and proportionate change in output is also 0. When you are adding additional unit 2 labor plus 2 capital, then your total product 22, there is 100% proportionate change in terms of inputs, whereas coming to output it becomes 100 and 120 proportionate change in output. If you take 4 plus 4, 4 labor plus 4 capital, TP 50 and input proportional change is 100%, and in case of output the proportionate change is more than the proportionate change in input. If you take 8 labor plus 8 capital, total output 125, and here also 100% change in input, and whereas coming to output 150 proportionate change. If you see the same representation in this diagrammatical representation, it exhibits the same when you are going to compare one level with that of second one. OP is greater than, PQ is greater than, QR is greater than RS. So this is known as increasing returns to scale. But coming to the constant returns, whatever may be the combination of labor and capital, we used to maintain the same proportionate change in terms of input as well as in terms of output. So in this case, OP is equal to PQ is equal to QR is equal to RS. There is no change. If the quantities of both variables K and L are doubled, even the output is also doubled. So this is said to be constant returns to scale. Coming to stage C, diminishing returns to scale, when a certain proportionate change in inputs, capital and labor leads to a less than proportionate change in output. For example, when inputs are doubled and output is less than doubled, then decreasing returns to scale operations. So if you're doubling the input, you observe the output values start 10, 18, 30, 45, whereas the input, the proportionate change is 100%, but the same may not be happen in case of output. It is always less than the input level. So in this case, if you observe, OP is less than, QR is less than RS. So this stage is known as diminishing rates, returns to scale. Then comes economies of scale. So economies of scale are the cost advantages that a business obtains due to expansion. Economies of scale refers to the lowering per unit cost as firm grows bigger. When economists start talking about this kind of economies of scale, they are usually talking about internal economies of scale. What kind of benefits, cost benefits the company may avail within the organization. So these are the advantages gained by an individual firm by increasing its size, that is having larger or more plants. Coming to the existence of economies of scale versus diseconomies of scale, which is determined on the basis of the relationship between production and price of an item or product. Economies of scale is the concept referring to a business event where the price of an item or product decreases as the production of the same item or product increases. Whereas diseconomies of scale defined is the inverse of economies of scale. It is where prices of an item or product increase as output of the same item or product decreases. Both concepts are commonly used in the business world to describe the status of production of an item or product, and these concepts can also be used to conduct research into reasons why efficiency is being maximized in certain areas of a business or why efficiency is lacking in other areas of business, and that should be analyzed by taking into consideration of these two concepts, economies and diseconomies of scale. Coming to the graph of economies and diseconomies of scale, on a diseconomies of scale graph, the cost of a given item or product is shown to increase as each new unit of the product is created. The y-axis of this type of graph represent cost for the given product, and whereas on x-axis it represents output or production of the given product. Just by making changes in terms of the quantity of the goods, we can find change in terms of the cost. On an economies of scale graph, the cost of the product will shown to decrease as the output of the product increases. See, if you observe this graph, if you are going to increase the quantity, you can see that there is a reduction in terms of the cost. The y-axis and x-axis represent the same variables as they do on a diseconomies of scale. So on y-axis, we have taken cost and x-axis the quantity. The average cost, the left hand side on y-axis, is decreasing as the quantity produced output, the bottom x-axis, increases. Then what kind of advantages we are going to avail with economies of scale? So they may reduce per unit cost, increase profits, growth of business, and also the business credibility increases, and we can also make improvement in the existing processes. Examples of economies of scale. The most common example of economies of scale is the supermarket store. They can buy products in bulk at a lower cost due to their large capacity. Therefore, they enjoy the benefit of reduced average cost. Another example, like if an airline company which invests millions in buying a new plane, if there are only few customers, the airline will have to charge a very high fee to break even. However, it serves millions of customers and therefore can recoup its changes by charging much less. Thus, it results in reduced average cost by an increased level of production of services. Then coming to the types of economies of scale, there are two types, internal and external. So internal economies of scale, it happens due to factors internal to the firm. For example, investment in highly efficient machinery, hiring of the specialized workforce, or holding a patent over something unique like production machinery. It leads to a reduction in average cost and also a well competitive advantage. Coming to the types of internal economies of scale, technical economies of scale. This occurs when an organization invests in modern technology which helps in lowering the cost of production. It enables an organization to produce a large number of goods in a lesser period. And second one, financial economies of scale. This occurs when large organizations take a loan with a low rate of interest. Bank The banks easily gives them loans since they have good credibility. And third type is managerial economies of scale. This occurs when large organizations employ people with a special skill set which helps to maximize their profits like an accountant or manager. And fourth one, marketing economies of scale. It occurs when large organizations increase their budget. They can then spread their market by setting up branches or buy more raw materials in bulk with lesser price. Internal economies of scale. If you see technical economies, that is containerization, special and capital machinery technology, bulk discounts, purchasing economies, monopoly power, large scale application of the division of labor, and using specialist managers across the supply chain. Interest rates, if you take, then financial economies, the companies will get loans at lower interest rates. Then risk bearing economies from diversification, We can reduce the risk, and network economies, which helps to lower marketing cost. So containerization establishes separate encrypted containers on personal devices, a secure area, the device that keeps business data insulated from everything else on the device and allows admin to manage only what is in the container, restricting corporate access on personal data. And coming to external economies of scale, external economies of scale are achieved due to external factors such as tax reductions, government subsidies, improved transportation networks, etc. For example, suppose the government want to increase steel production. So in order to do so, the government announces that all steel producers who employ more than 10,000 workers will be given a 20% tax break resulting from an industry growing in size. So thus firms employing less than 10,000 workers can potentially lower their average cost of production by employing more workers. So this is an example of an external economy of scale, one that affects the entire industry or sector of the economy. The first economies of scale types transportation and communication. So concentration of firms provide better communication system for all. For example, rail road facilities become available to all. The transport system reduces cost. The second, skilled labor. With the concentration of firms, skilled labor is available to all the firms because people living in the nearby areas get technical training. Third one, facility of workshop. So concentration of firms provides incentive for the technical persons to establish their workshops, and hence all the firms benefit from these because they need not to incur cost in establishing the workshops. Helping industry. This economy arises because of concentration of firms. In local industry, it becomes possible to split up some of the processes which are taken over by specialist firm. In Faisalabad, with textile mills, dyeing factories, designing centers, ginning factories, and calendaring plants have been established. That's how the companies they used to help each other in the particular industry or segment. The next, research and experiment. In local industry, research and experiment or development are centralized. So each individual firm need not to spend a separate amount on R&D. They benefit from common pool. Next, banking facility. The basic aim of a commercial bank is to maximize profits, and for this, they need deposits and provide credit to the traders, businessmen, and industrialists, etc. In a localized industry or business centers, bank opens their branches and all the firms benefit from banking and credit facility. The banking system helps in promoting trade and business. Then coming to diseconomies of scale. Diseconomies of scale occur when a business grows so large that the cost per unit increase. As output rises, it is not inevitable that unit cost will fall. So sometimes a business can get too big. So that we can see in this particular graph. Then reasons for diseconomies of scale, poor communication in a large firm. It can be hard to communicate ideas and new working practices. Then alienation. Working in a highly specialized assembly line can be very boring if workers become demotivated. So in a large firm, there is an increased gap between top and bottom. Example, call centers. The next, lack of control. When there is a large number of workers, it is easier to escape with not working very hard because it is more difficult for managers to notice shrinking. Thank you.
Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.